Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos.
The main character, after dying in his previous life, he wakes up inside of Dawn of the Dead, and he wakes up as a Grim Reaper from Resident Evil.
They tracked sound by twitching, head jerks, not full turns. I circled behind them and tested a pinecone toss. They flinched, turned, sniffed. Scent-based movement. Not standard. Took one down with the knife, severed spine. Second one reacted instantly, screamed, loud, shattered air like glass. I shot him 3 times, twice in the ribs, once in the neck. He didn't drop. Still came. Only fell when the 4th round hit the base of the skull. Examined the corpse. Nerve tissue thickened, bone density raised, olfactory nodes distended under the sinus plate. Confirmed early stage mutation. Faster reflexes. Higher tolerance. Worse scream. Tagged them in the journal. MKApps/Alpha-1. First true shift from Glenville type infected. Documented, burned both bodies, buried the knife. Didn't reuse it. Too much blood. Too little known. Day 195. Hit the first real town. Ashland, Kentucky. Small grid, dead power, some buildings still standing. Found civilian scrawl on the welcome sign. Be quiet, they're always listening. Old. Crows on the poles. I swept east to west. No contact. Then I found them. 17 infected, all bent over a well, drinking. That was new. No infected drinks from a clean well. They rot, they starve, they stand. These ones were slurping like animals. Fingers broken, jaws cracked open wide, chewing at the pump housing. I fired once, high velocity steel tip. Cracked 2 skulls. 15 turned at once. I ran them uphill, into a logging road choke point. Used the hammer. Used the axe. Used a flashbang to blind them. 4 minutes of contact. None survived. But neither did the well. Contaminated. I poured lye and salt into it, burned the bodies over top. Left a sign above the scorched dirt. Do not drink, do not linger. Continued south. Day 197. Sodium levels in creeks rising. Checked 8 sources, 6 contaminated. 1 ran red with oxidized flesh, not blood, not runoff. Breakdown matter, protein slurry. Infected using streams to dispose. Means some hive, behavior remains. Confirmed, the shift wasn't total. Glenville protocols didn't stop the southern branches from developing on their own. But this wasn't natural. This was encouraged. Tactically, biologically, structurally, it pointed to a localized trigger event. Someone fed them. Or something did. Day 198. Reached the coal belt. Mountains above, canyons below. Found a mine. 14 rails stacked out front, no signs of life. But deep inside, sound. Low, wet, gurgling. I took my time. Crawled through the shaft. Light off, mask tight, rifle stowed. Used the blade only. Inside, I found a pit. Depth 12 meters. In it, infected. Dozens. All laying flat, arms extended, not moving. Above them, a single body. Female. Held up by meat hooks, face covered in a gas mask, tubes running from her back down into the pit. Alive. Barely. Her lungs were being pumped. Her sweat pooled downward into a grate. Infected were drinking from it. I shot her without asking. The whole pit screamed. I pulled the frag pin, dropped the grenade, turned and ran. Explosion collapsed the chamber. I didn't stop. I ran all the way back to the tree line. Slept for 2 hours with the rifle under my neck. When I woke, no one had followed. But the screams still echoed in my head. This wasn't just mutation. It was experimentation. Day 200. Confirmed. Southern Vector MK app/Alpha 1 was seeded intentionally. Fragment of a trail found in a burned RV outside Mount Sterling. USB device. Bent, melted, recovered partial drive signature. Manufacturer tag linked to a FEMA field lab in Georgia. Redacted entries. Trial vector stable. Reproduction via live tether functional. Target is to induce subpack formations through chemical feeding. Noise resistance increasing. Daylight sensitivity reduced. Olfactory function hyperextended. Keep them moving. Keep them hungry. Corridor structures are ineffective against this variant. I deleted the file. Then I buried the drive in concrete. Then I painted one sentence on the inside wall of the RV. You failed. They wanted this strain to move, to spread, to break the corridor. But it wasn't going to, because I was here now. Day 202. Set up temporary perimeter post near Paintsville. Built 3 sentry dummies. Installed 3 wire alarms. Painted corridor symbols every 2 kilometers. Left chalk at 2 resting points. Didn't see any survivors. Didn't expect to. These hills didn't want people. They wanted rot. I gave them fire instead. Day 205. One final encounter. 3 infected, all standing around a pile of deer. One of them holding a femur. Not eating. Just holding. Like a weapon. I walked up to 20 meters. Didn't aim. Just watched. One of them sniffed the air. Snapped toward me. I raised the rifle and fired. Chest shot. It didn't stop. I shot the leg next. That dropped it. Then I knelt and executed the others. No emotion. No questions. Just numbers. I tagged the site. App/Alpha 1 terminal node, locality 8 cleared. Then I walked to the top of the ridge and looked east. The sun was rising over Glenville. Even from here, I could still see the smoke signal. The fortress stood. The corridor flowed. And the south was now sterilized. Not by fire, but by function. Chapter 13. Expansion by code, not consent. Day 206. The Appalachian node was dead. Not quiet dead. No further movement, no active transmission, no structured hives. Alpha mutations had been seeded intentionally and exterminated deliberately. I made sure of that. The southern corridor wasn't collapsing. It had never even been born, and now it never would. That left only one viable frontier. The East Coast. Densely populated before the fall, heavily targeted during collapse. Its cities were still black, their bridges shattered, their comms dead. New York, Philadelphia, Newark, Boston, all broadcast ghosts. But there were survivors, somewhere under the rubble, enough of them to scream into the void, enough to spread infection again if left unchecked, and more importantly, enough to ignore the code. I'd heard them on fractured shortwave. Free zones, old federal enclaves, false democracies wrapped in barbed wire and looted slogans. Weak pockets, full of hunger and disobedience. They didn't follow the corridor. That was no longer acceptable. Structure wasn't a suggestion. It was an operating condition. I returned to Glenville not to rest, but to activate. Day 208. Courthouse, central floor. The chalkboard had 15 new names, each one marked under one of 3 tiers: Scavenger, Watch, Enforcer. I reviewed them silently. The selections weren't made by me. They were made by behavior. Every tagged survivor had followed orders, completed assignments, and held line positions for more than 30 days. I tested their readiness without warning. Dropped a canister in their sleep tents, punctured it, sounded like a breach. Only 2 stood up with weapons. Only 1 scanned the blind spot at the southern fence. I brought that one to the command stairwell and handed him a blade. "You're now Corridor East Enforcer 1, I said. He blinked. I thought you handled enforcement." "I do," I said. "Everywhere, including here." He nodded once. Took the blade. Didn't speak again. Correct reaction. Day 210. I began selection. Not for soldiers. For doctrine enforcers. I held no ceremony, no announcements, no voting. I picked them based on 3 criteria. Their work record, consistent, unbroken, obedient. Their silence under stress. Their ability to follow without understanding. If you need an explanation, you don't belong in command. Structure flows downward. Explanation flows never. I found 7. All were already part of the corridor. 2 were from the earliest hold points. 3 had been tested in the burn zones. 2 were children who grew up watching others fail. I gave each of them a journal, a chalk stub, a field knife, and a grey armband. Their mission wasn't leadership. It was reproduction. Replication of the corridor eastward. One city at a time. Under code. Under silence. Under me. Day 211. Phase 1 of Eastern Expansion. Spine Reconnaissance. I launched 2 scouts north toward Harrisburg. 1 to Baltimore. 1 to the ruins outside Philadelphia. Each carried a journal and 5 days of supply. No radios, no backup. They were to follow the highway bones and track survivor density, infection flow, and scavenger patterning. They left without questions. I handed each one a flare. "If you see me again," I said, "you've earned the flare." They understood what that meant. While they moved forward, I remained in Glenville to build the next layer, doctrine control infrastructure. That meant doctrine had to live without my shadow. So I put it into motion. Not with law. With instruction. I created the corridor expansion packet. A binder, 4 pages, no names. Page 1. Directives. Establish a center. Build outward. Define zones by distance, not preference. Observe before acting. Speak only to correct disobedience. Never negotiate. Never plead. Never offer comfort. No titles, no counsels, no second opinions. Page 2. Symbols. Red triangle, command post. White circle, safe rest point. Crossed lines, dead zone. Arrow, corridor direction. Mark left only, never right, never center. Page 3. Punishment. Disobedience equals isolation. Repetition equals removal. Disruption equals termination. Page 4. Legacy clause. If structure collapses, rebuild. If order fails, reset. If command dies, doctrine lives. You do not need me to obey. That packet would spread with the expansion. 1,000 copies, all the same. Written by hand. Typed with stolen ink ribbon from an old Glenville library. No edits. No authorship. Just structure, Day 212. I gathered all enforcers. We met inside the stripped city hall. Chalkboard behind me. Rust under our boots. I spoke. You are not leaders, you are vectors. The corridor does not reward loyalty, it expects it. You do not offer mercy, you offer code. If they follow it, they live. If not, they do not. You will not debate. You will not create. You will carry what I built eastward until every ruin knows the mark. I didn't ask for questions. I dismissed them. Each took a corridor packet. Each walked out with supplies. By 1700, they were gone. Only I remained. Exactly how it began. Exactly how it always would be. Day 213. Scout returned from Harrisburg. Confirmed light survivor activity. Pockets of order, none organized. No corridor signs. Survivors relied on looted Red Cross posters and burned out CDC promises. One group had converted a museum into a commune. He entered quietly, observed. They sang songs, set fires, held hands. 3 were bitten. None were executed. He didn't stay. He burned the building on his way out. They never saw him. I marked him as viable. Sent him further north. Day 215. Philadelphia report. Worse. Utopian camp. Democracy slogans etched into a rusted tanker truck. Mock government. Uniforms stitched from trash. Elected survivors. They made speeches. They forgave infected family. They took in strangers without testing. They believed kindness would save them. It didn't. On the third day, the scout counted 37, infected moving freely in and out of the compound. They had names. Safe infected. Peace walkers. The scout didn't act. He wrote one word in the report. Hopeless. I didn't send him back. I told him to hold position. They would collapse on their own. He would remain to confirm it. Day 217. I moved. Alone. Back through the southern spine. Marked all stable positions. Logged infection death sites. Cleared the perimeter around the junction between Glenville and Harrisburg. One man followed me. A child, maybe 13. No armband, no training. He said nothing, just walked 5 paces behind. On the third day, I stopped. Handed him a chalk stub. If you make it back to Glenville alive, give them this. Then I threw it into the dirt. He ran to pick it up. Didn't speak. That was enough. Day 219. Civic District in Baltimore fully collapsed. No structure. No signs. No control. Burned buildings still smoldering. Scavengers fought over shoes. I didn't engage. I marked the area as dead. Crossed lines on the freeway overpass. Painted in blood from a crawler I'd silenced with my boot. That's what they'd see. That's what they'd follow. Some would keep walking. Most would not. That was correct. Not everyone deserves a corridor. Not everyone belongs in structure. Some are better erased. Day 220. Back in Glenville. I opened the top floor of the courthouse for the first time. Placed the doctrine packet in a plastic crate. Labeled it for when I don't come back. Then I closed it. Taped it shut. No one was allowed up there again. Day 221. The East Corridor was real. One spine from Glenville to Harrisburg. Second emerging toward Philadelphia. Third, under debate. I didn't rest. I walked the length of the path every 2 nights, silently, checking for deviation. I found one. A fire outside Zone 6. Unauthorized. Unreported. I tracked the smoke. 2 survivors, laughing loud. I waited until dawn. Then I shot both in the chest. Buried them under the fire pit. Painted the stones red. No one would ever use that site again. Structure is not negotiated. Structure is enforced. And now it spreads. From ash. From silence. From doctrine. From me, Chapter 14, Western Spine under Judgment. Day 222. The East was moving. Not ready, not stable, but moving. The structure was there, etched into overpasses, burned into doors, written in the blood of those who disobeyed. Harrisburg had 2 functioning hold points. Philadelphia's commune had collapsed just as predicted. No one had come out of the tank yard for days. The scouts' report was short. They burned each other before the infected reached them. Correct, unremarkable. But doctrine is not measured by collapse. It's measured by resistance. And resistance wasn't coming from the east. It was coming from the west. From the original expansion path. From Cincinnati. The first distant node in the corridor, where I planted my first copy. I had received only 3 full compliance confirmations from that zone in the last week, fewer than expected. Enforcers had gone silent. Scavenger patrols were drifting from assigned paths. Someone had built a market post near the freeway interchange. Unauthorized. Markets attract softness. Softness leads to talking. Talking leads to deviation. I don't tolerate deviation. Glenville was ready to hold on its own. So I moved west again. Not as a founder. Not as a builder. As a blade. Day 223. Departure, 4:30 hours. Gear standard, suppressed M4 4 mags, sidearm 2 mags, axe, hammer, chalk, gas mask, 2 signal flares, 1 body bag. No camp, no trailer, no team. Enforcers asked nothing. They knew what departure without announcement meant. Correction was coming. And it wore my boots. Day 226. I crossed the Ohio River. Entered the original Cincinnati corridor spine. The roads were still marked, white arrow lines, red circled rest signs. But they were faint, unmaintained. I stopped at hold point 4. It had been converted. The signage was defaced. My corridor marks were painted over with black smudges. A paper banner hung from a rusted frame. No masters, no rule, walk free. I stared at it for 13 seconds. Then I burned the entire hold point. Every bed, every box, every logbook. I erased it. Its history was no longer valid. Day 227. Local enforcer post, abandoned. I found a signal flag buried in dust. Grey cloth, standard issue, torn, used as a pillow. Tracked prints to a shopping mall on the outer grid. Heavy traffic, too heavy. Corridor traffic is meant to be filtered. Survivors aren't supposed to congregate. Inside the mall, light, candles, markings. Someone had painted their own system over mine. Crude arrows, blue circles, safe zones. One room held crates of looted corridor rations with handwritten tags. Contribute what you can, take what you need. Structure had been replaced by sentiment. I pulled every candle and threw them into the trash pit. Then I doused the tags in fuel and lit them. One woman screamed from the corner. "We need that." I looked at her, didn't answer. Then I pointed at the ashes. No, I said. You wanted that. Wanting isn't structure. She ran. I didn't shoot her. Yet. Day 228. I found the former enforcer. Name, Aya, male, mid-30s. Assigned 5 weeks prior. Confirmed for patrol stability. I found him in the back room of a converted library, making chalk drawings for a group of children. They laughed while he sketched a corridor triangle and turned it into a cartoon fox. See, he said to them, it's just a shape, it's not scary. I walked inside, no weapon raised. He stood up fast. You came back, he said. I stared at the children. Leave. They looked at him. He nodded. They left. You were instructed to enforce, I said. I did, he replied, but they don't respond to silence anymore. They need connection. They're scared. Good. Scared people collapse. Disobedient people spread collapse. He looked away. They were starving. There's a difference between mercy and treason. He swallowed. I raised my sidearm. He didn't move. You're not going to listen, he said. I pulled the trigger. 1 round, heart. He fell backward into the chalkboard. I walked over, erased the fox. Then I wrote. Structure returns, silence follows. Day 229. New doctrine protocol. All Western enforcers decommissioned. I tracked the other 3, assigned to Cincinnati. 1 had gone missing, likely fled east. The 2nd had bartered gear to a militia in exchange for ammunition. The 3rd, female name, S, was still holding position near the flood walls. I watched her for 6 hours. She maintained her post, checked patrol marks, cleaned her rifle, didn't speak. I stepped into the alley. She turned, raised her hand, didn't salute, but didn't run. You're here to test me, she said. No. I thought I failed. You were the only one who didn't. She looked away. There's no one left who listens. There is now. She lowered her hand. I gave her new supplies. Then I asked, do you have chalk? She handed it over. I scratched the corridor mark on the wall beside her. You'll re-establish the line. She nodded. Didn't smile. Correct response. Day 231. Returned to the Central Market outpost. It was still running. Speakers now played old music. Someone had dragged a generator up from a substation. 20 survivors haggled over boots, canned food, and empty promises. I walked through the center, raised my weapon, fired 1 round into the generator. The sound cut instantly. They stared. 1 man shouted, "Who the hell are you?" I walked over, ripped the flag from his stall. A red handprint painted over corridor white. He grabbed my arm. I broke it at the elbow. He screamed. I stepped over him. This is not a zone, I said. This is a failure. Then I opened the fuel tank and dropped a flare inside. The center went up. 15 survivors ran. 5 stayed. I pointed. You follow the corridor, you live. You disobey, you burn. 2 nodded. 1 said, it's too late to rebuild this place. I stared at her. This was never a place. It's just a line. I nodded. And now it's back. Day 233. Restoration complete. All unauthorized activity removed. Scouts reassigned. Survivors retested. Cincinnati's spine re-established under absolute silence. No bartering. No camps. Just movement. Forward or not at all. I didn't stay. There was no need. I left the last corridor sign at the freeway. You had structure, you lost it, now you earn it. Then I turned east. Glenville was waiting, and the north was calling. Boston, collapse city. No contact, no corridor, no rule. That would change, because I was still moving, because I was still alive, and because order doesn't rest. It marches. With boots like mine, Chapter 15, the voice that cannot be ignored. Day 234. Glenville was silent when I returned. That was expected. The fortress doesn't celebrate. It doesn't welcome. It doesn't greet. It observes. It adapts. It corrects. A new patrol had begun marking northern ridge paths in my absence. Good. 2 new enforcers had passed their hold rotation tests. Better. But something more had to begin now. The doctrine worked, but only if carried by those willing to carry it. That number would always be finite. The enemy was not infected anymore. It was scale. Glenville's corridors reached west to Cincinnati, north to Harrisburg, nearly south to the Georgia line, but distance consumed precision. The further the doctrine spread, the more it diluted. So I planned the next phase. Doctrine replication by signal. If survivors couldn't walk to Glenville to receive order, they would hear it. If they didn't see the marks, they'd hear the voice. If they ignored the structure on the wall, they would obey the structure in the air. No message, no discussion. Just law. Day 235. I convened the command tier. 7 enforcers, 1 each from Harrisburg, Glenville proper, and the southern corridor, plus 4 trainees undergoing evaluation. We stood in the rooftop sunroom of the courthouse, stripped bare but wind-secured. They stood without speaking. I didn't sit. There is no time for correction by hand anymore, I said. Survivors are failing in silence. The corridor must become noise. 1 enforcer, the female from Harrisburg, spoke. You want to use broadcasts? Yes. We've never sent messages before, only scouts. We're not sending a message, we're sending structure, over and over, on every band, on every frequency. She didn't question further. Correct. Another asked, what do we broadcast? I turned toward the blackboard, wrote 1 sentence. You are not free, you are alive because we allow it. Then another. This is corridor law. Enter clean, obey signs, do not deviate. Then finally, this frequency is not a suggestion. I drew the circle, the triangle, the line. Then I turned back. Copy that, record it, make it permanent. Day 237. Construction began. The goal was continental. 3 full-range signal towers. First, Glenville proper. Second, halfway to Chicago. Third, southern intersection zone, marked 0 south, between Atlanta and the Florida border. Each tower would repeat corridor doctrine on all known civilian and military radio bands, endlessly, 24 hours a day. No song, no rescue calls, no survivor chatter. Only structure. Not explanation. Instruction. Phase 1, Glenville Tower. Construction base, the old electrical substation east of the city, still standing, steel bones intact, elevation 47 meters, clear line of sight on 4 compass paths. I reassigned 18 survivors to construction duty. No prior engineering knowledge needed. I gave orders, they followed them. Steel scaffolds were stacked in groups of 5, bolted using looted highway signage as reinforcement. Weatherproof insulation was stripped from 5 abandoned buses. All work done without verbal command. If someone didn't understand, they were rotated out. One man tried to joke about finally having a radio to play music. I gave him a choice. Remove his own tongue with the corridor knife. Leave. He chose to leave. That was correct. We continued without him. Day 239. Transmitter assembly. We found 7 usable shortwave rigs in the Glenville archives. Repaired 3. Combined them into a crude modular cluster using stolen copper from a burned rail depot. Signal strength would only reach 50 kilometers unaided. So I installed a repeater tower. Then another. 10 total. Placed every 10 kilometers northeast of Glenville. Each built by hand, each powered by solar scrap packs, each hidden inside derelict structures, barns, gas stations, silos. Each bearing the corridor mark etched into steel. One survivor asked, "What if the infected hear it too?" They already do. What if they follow the sound? Good, then we know where to kill them. Day 242. Initial broadcast test. The courthouse tower emitted the first doctrine loop at 4:15 hours. This is Corridor Authority Signal 1. You are not free. You are alive because we allow it. The corridor is law. Follow the marks. Enter clean, obey signs. Do not deviate. You are being heard. Repeated every 15 seconds. No background noise, no signature. Just voice. Synthesized, unrecognizable. Machine-based. No tone, no accent, no gender. It would speak longer than any of us lived. That was the point. Day 243. Signal integrity test passed. Every repeater broadcasted the loop. Survivors within Glenville limits could hear it on all radio bands. Those who questioned it were removed. Not for fear. For doubt. This wasn't a conversation. It was presence. One woman asked, "Will it ever stop?" I shook my head. It doesn't stop. It doesn't sleep. It doesn't care. She nodded. Correct. Phase 2, Western Expansion Node. Cincinnati Spine would receive second broadcast tower. I selected 5 workers, 2 enforcers, 1 scavenger, no one else. We transporting materials by hand, wheelbarrows, salvaged carts, sled rigs. Every item checked, no substitutions. We reached the site by day 245. Old television broadcast tower in the West Hills, 70 meters, damaged, not destroyed. 3 days to clear infected from inside. 15 total. 2 climbed, 1 fell off and broke both arms, didn't die, screamed. I shot him. Not for pain. For failure. He didn't object. His eyes thanked me. Day 248. Second tower came online. Broadcast identical. Now active from the Mississippi River to the Alleghenies. Every survivor could hear us. They couldn't call back. That was intended. Order doesn't argue. It announces. Day 250. Reactions began. Scouts returned with reports. Survivor groups abandoning old logos and signs. Fake governments erasing graffiti. Utopias suddenly enforcing silence and screening. 2 known scavenger militias attempting to locate signal origin. 1 failed ambush, burned all 6 bodies, hung their rifles from a tree with a placard. They didn't listen. The structure didn't need to explain itself. It's saturated. Like air, like weight, like consequence. Day 251. I returned to Glenville. Stood at the base of the new tower. Watched the wind cut through the frame. The voice kept repeating, "You are not free. You are alive because we allow it." I didn't smile, but I felt something adjust inside my chest. Not pride, just confirmation. Structure had grown teeth. Now it had a tongue. It spoke endlessly, and every word carried judgment. Dawn of the Dead. What if I am Agent H.U.NK? Chapter 16. The North Does Not Ask. Day 252. Structure now had a voice. It didn't shout. It didn't soothe. It repeated. A truth without compromise. You are not free. You are alive because we allow it. Survivors couldn't run from it. They could turn the dial, flip the switch, bury the receiver beneath soil and stone, but they'd still hear it. Others would still follow it. There would be marks. There would be patrols. There would be judgment. 2 towers weren't enough. Doctrine without reach is doctrine in name only. The 3rd node would come later. The South was still crawling with federal rot. FEMA bunkers, weaponized strains, fragmented command remnants trying to seed a new hierarchy using old lies. But that wasn't the priority. The priority was Boston. No corridor passed through the New England frontier. No hold points. No enforcers. No doctrine. No proof the voice had been heard. So I would go myself. No team. No caravan. No scouts. Only the one man who could not be misquoted. Day 253. I left Glenville at 200. Enforcer 1 asked no questions. He simply walked to the gate and placed a flare canister by the edge. Lit it. Stepped back. The flame turned red, not white. That was the code. Operation Frontier Signal. Solo mission. Unknown resistance. Permanent corridor potential. No support expected. The gate closed behind me. No words. Correct. Day 254. Crossed the Susquehanna by noon. Weather, rain. Visibility, low. Roads clogged with husks. Infected behavior, minimal, only 6 encounters, 4 crawlers, 2 blind. Killed with silence, hatchet only. I stopped at an old bus station in Allentown to rest. 2 hours, didn't sleep. Survivor notes still carved on the wall. Don't go north, it's not worth it. I crossed the words out. Rewrote. Corridor comes anyway. Day 255. Reached Hartford by dusk. No signs of occupation, no lights. But I found the remains of structure. Someone had tried to build a corridor copy here. Markings were wrong, shapes inverted, messages softened. Freedom through unity. Safe if you stay. They twisted it. They used corridor symbols, but turned the silence into politics, turned structure into therapy. None of them remained. Inside an old DMV building, I found 19 bodies stacked behind the counter. Starved, not infected, signs of violence, stabbing, blunt trauma, 2 shot, 1 set on fire. The collapse had come internally, as it always does, without enforcement. I erased every mark in that building, painted a real one on the front door. They tried, then they lied, don't lie again. Then I moved on. Day 256. Movement increased near Worcester. Unnatural. 4 groups of infected, none traveling together, but each heading east, purposeful, clustered in rows. That wasn't drift. That was migration. Something was pulling them. I let them pass. Tracked one group for 5 kilometers. They followed an old bus route. Along the way, I found bone piles. Not human. Deer, dog, coyote, all stripped, all split at the ribs. Means the hive was feeding in advance means something big was gathering. I tagged the infected class, hive pool pattern Delta. Documented, then circled north. Avoided direct contact. Priority was corridor placement, not eradication. Not yet. Day 257. Boston. I saw the skyline through a shattered treetop line. Grey, burned. 2 towers still stood, but most of the city had collapsed into itself. The storm line rolled in by nightfall. I entered through the south, along I-93. First contact, 3 infected stacked against a school fence, unmoving, still breathing. I snapped the first neck by hand, didn't bother with tools. Second and third turned. 1 moaned, slow, weak. Too easy. That meant danger. The strong ones were elsewhere. Or watching. The first survivors didn't find me. I found them. A checkpoint had been made out of old ambulances and crates near South Station. 8 bodies moved behind it. 5 armed, 2 watching, 1 in a chair, 2 clean, 2 still. I approached in daylight. They shouted, "Stop right there." I stopped. "Who the hell are you?" I didn't answer. "Turn around." I didn't. 1 aimed, final warning. I reached into my coat and threw a flare. Red. It hissed and burned on the asphalt. They flinched. "You part of that damn broadcast?" one of them asked. I nodded. "Where are the rest of you?" "There are no others." The one in the chair finally spoke. "You're alone." "Yes." He stood up. "You're outnumbered." "No, I'm correct. That outnumbers everything." He laughed. I walked forward. He didn't stop me. That was the mistake. Inside their compound, chaos. No law, just routine. No training, just force. They ate together but slept apart. No zones, no schedules. Weakness disguised as community. They'd been hearing the doctrine for days, but they had no interpreter, no enforcer. They didn't follow it. They debated it. They discussed it. I listened to a woman try to argue that the corridor was a trauma response. I left the room before I had to correct her. Instead, I walked into their supply depot. Found 3 crates marked Enforcer Support. They de-looted them from a caravan, one with my old scout team. Inside, a half-burned doctrine packet, 2 corridor rifles, 1 armband, bloodstained. The chairman entered behind me. "Those were your people." "Yes." "Sorry." "You're not." He didn't reply. I looked at the weapons, then at him. "You took these and didn't understand what they meant. We're trying to survive." "No. You don't get to judge that." "I do, because I still am." He stepped back. I shot him in the leg. He dropped, screamed. The guards rushed in. I fired twice more, both center mass. Silence. I stepped over him. Pointed to the crates. "These now belong to the corridor." One woman screamed. I turned to her. "You want freedom?" She nodded, shaking. "Then earn it. Build the signal tower. Repeat what I say, every 15 seconds. I handed her the packet. She took it. Didn't speak again. Correct. Day 259. I established hold point Boston 0. Built perimeter lines using overturned cars and rebar. Dug 3 traps. Marked all access roads with red triangle on black background. This corridor would not be soft. Not a haven. Not a home. A rule. The others would follow it. Or leave. Or die. Day 260. Installed broadcast tower relay on the Hancock ruin. Height 52 meters above ground. Signal tested to reach southern New Hampshire. Loop installed. You are not free. You are alive because we allow it. This is corridor law. Enter clean, obey signs. Do not deviate. Do not think, do not doubt. You are being heard. No survivor interrupted. No one asked for help. Only one man approached. You're going to take over the whole country, aren't you? No. What then? Just the parts that want to live. He nodded. Didn't stop me. Correct. Chapter 17. A language they cannot ignore. Day 261. I left Boston at 200. It was secure, a soft perimeter around a hard signal. The broadcast tower rose from the ruins like a weaponized thought, transmitting silence and structure through the static haze. Survivors had stopped arguing. Most just listened now. Some didn't understand, but they obeyed anyway. That was sufficient for now. But not every target hears the doctrine the same way. Some don't hear it at all. Some hear it and move toward it. The infected had changed. They weren't a disease anymore. They were a reaction, not random, not instinctive, purposeful. Migration patterns had shifted. Hive-class formations had emerged. The ones I tagged in Worcester, Hivepool Delta. Too organized, too quiet, too many moving as one. No civilian had survived direct contact. No unit had studied them closely. That would change. If doctrine could reach them, they would respond. If not, they would die. Either outcome was correct. Objective: field test the influence of structured broadcast on Hivepool Delta formations. Location: Eastern Corridor Intersection Zone, codename Cinder Glen, 25 kilometers southeast of Albany. Previously marked red zone, forested ruin, no law, no hold. Reports of infected clustering near long-wave radio bursts. Multiple transmission pings had registered as interference on corridor relay lines. I would test if they heard. And what they did next. Day 262. Arrival, 500 hours. Dense fog, no wind, humidity 92%. No power lines, no standing water, high probability of isolated nests. Cinder Glen had burned once. You could still smell it beneath the moss. Most structures had collapsed, suburban 2 stories, strip malls, small farms. The road signs were melted. That was correct. I chose an open basin for the test. Visibility 360 degrees, one entrance path, no vertical drop zones. Set up relay unit K7, portable signal, range 5 km, battery 72 hours. Looped custom message. You are not free. This signal is law. Respond to structure. Follow, obey, die quiet. I adjusted the tone, flattened human cadence, removed recognizable language patterns. This wasn't for survivors. This was for the ones that had forgotten they were once human. Day 263. Hour 2. First contact. Single crawler entered the basin. Skin torn, no vocal cords, tagged as low priority. It moved without awareness. I did not kill it. It passed near the relay, circled, stopped. Then it looked up. No eyes, just movement. As if listening. I increased volume, 10%. It twitched, backed up, vomited dark fluid, then laid flat against the earth. Stayed there. I left it untouched. Marked Subject 1. Hour 4. Second contact. 4 infected, all bipedal, fast, mottled skin, 2 with exposed jaws. Formation arrowhead. They approached the relay without sound. Then all four froze within 20 meters. Stood still for 93 seconds. One knelt, head tilted toward the speaker grill. Another rotated, scanning. Then all at once, they turned north. Moved with purpose. Direction of origin, Glenville. I logged their path. Did not follow. Marked subject group A responsive type 1. Doctrine had pulled them. That confirmed a traction response. Hour 6. New group. Larger. 17 total. Tag, Hivepool Delta confirmed. They moved as one, not pack hunting, herding, protective inner ring. 4 smaller hunched infected at the center. 1 malformed, massive head, oversized spine, dragging limbs. Obvious command node. The others shielded it. No aggression, no screaming. Then they stopped. 50 meters from the relay. The center one tilted its head. No eyes. But it faced the signal. Did not move. It opened its mouth. No sound. Then the others began to respond. Hands twitching, legs bending, movements too synchronized to be coincidence. It was interpreting. Then I adjusted the message. Removed words. Left only structure. 2 tones, 1 pause. Triangle interval. Circle interval. Repeat. 7 seconds. Then again. Tone, tone, silence. Tone, 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 silence. Repeat. I watched them sway. The malformed central one jerked. Spasmed, slumped, shuddered violently. Then it shrieked. The others collapsed. All of them simultaneously. Dead. Autonomic system overload. No sign of visible trauma. They died at the same time. The pattern changed. I logged it. Marked subject group B, responsive type 2. Confirmed, doctrine frequency can cause hive failure. I killed the signal. Buried relay K7. Marked the site with burned stones. They listened, it killed them. Then I moved on. Day 264. I returned to Glenville by nightfall. No announcement. No one asked. I went directly to the broadcast control tower. Sat at the console. Tuned the voice. Wrote 1 new loop. You are not free. We speak now to all things. If you hear this, obey. If you move toward us, die faster. This is structure. This is not peace. This is what remains when peace fails. It began transmitting within the hour. I marked it as Signal Class 2, Cross-Target Directive. 3 zones began to broadcast the new loop. No responses yet. But they would come. Not because we asked. Because the signal doesn't stop. And what doesn't stop cannot be ignored. Chapter 18, Tower 3 over Ashes. Day 265. Georgia wasn't lost. It had been abandoned. Not by civilians, by command. FEMA, DHS, private sector biological labs. When the outbreak started, they didn't retreat. They dug in. They carved bunkers into limestone and called it resilience. They gathered infected like assets, indexed symptoms, tagged bodies, ran trials. The first documented alpha strain wasn't found in Georgia. It was manufactured there. The FEMA black site east of Valdosta still existed. I had proof. A corrupted log pulled from an abandoned substation in Macon. Data flags with coordinates, bunker entries, subject logs dated weeks after the fall, not survivors, personnel. That site wasn't just active, it was hostile. No corridor reached it, no signal pulsed southward. Tower 3 had to go up in the ashes of the black site. No alternative. no negotiation. When the tower rose, there would be no debate about whose doctrine ruled this continent. No voices left to contradict it. Just mine. Objective: terminate the FEMA experimental hub, known as Blacksite 17A. Exterminate all on-site personnel. Erase all viral archives. Construct Signal Tower 3, codename 0 South. Initiate full corridor saturation from Chicago to Glenville to Boston to the Gulf. Day 267. Departed Glenville without escort. 2 bags. 1 suppressed rifle. 1 axe. 4 collapsible solar antennae. 1 transmitter core. 1 message. This is not sanctuary. This is structure. Welcome it or be removed. Day 269. Crossed into the southern dead line. North Georgia was decomposing slowly, towns held together by superstition. Chalk outlines faked corridor symbols. 1 post offered bread in exchange for old world prayers. 1 group hoisted a white flag at the sight of me. I didn't stop. There was no point in correction. They weren't trying to disobey. They had already failed to exist. Day 271. Arrived at the outskirts of Valdosta. Climate humid. Terrain, swamp grit flatlands and concrete husks. Signs of infection density, high. The black site was beneath an old state university satellite campus. From the surface, no trace. Only the map file gave it away, marked Utility Station 39, with authorized entry, Tier 6. Tier 6 meant terminal clearance. That meant death zones. I located the access shaft, behind the ruins of a collapsed gymnasium. Security grill, electronic lock, still powered. 1 red light blinked, once every 6 seconds. Still alive. Still inside. I set perimeter charges, 4 shaped, 2 he. No escape routes. This wouldn't be a breach, this would be a culling. They had survived too long. I would correct that. Day 272. Midnight. I descended. 37 meters underground. Ladder gave way to concrete tunnel, lined with reinforced steel. Then light, dim, fluorescent tubes still functioning on backup grid. A door waited, glass panel, biometric scan plate shattered. I pushed it open. Heat fog rolled out. The air moved. Not just temperature, tension, a pressure across the skin. That only meant one thing. Containment failure. They were still trying to hold the lab, but the rot was already inside. Correct. I kept walking. 15 meters in, the first corpse. A doctor, FEMA tag, ID badge peeled, not torn, chest cavity split open surgically, ribs pulled back, internal organs tagged. Not infected. Autopsied. Means it wasn't a loss, it was a study. I kept walking. Second chamber, containment corridor, plexiglass chambers on either side, 6 occupied, 3 by infected, still alive, monitored. Their eyes followed me. They weren't snarling. They were watching, tracking. Each bore a black neck collar, wired to a central grid. Experiment code etched into their forearms. MK App B1. Delta Cross 2. Pre-alpha spinal variant. Confirmed, these weren't natural infections, these were built. Instruments chirped behind glass. 1 monitor tried to register my presence. I pulled my blade. Severed every line. Then I gassed the room. Didn't watch them die. Just waited. Main lab. 17 terminals. 6 personnel. All in hazmat suits. 1 woman turned, and froze. You! I fired 2 shots, one to her head, one to the center unit. The rest screamed, ran, reached for weapons, syringes, transmitters. None made it. I moved like doctrine, clean, fast, inescapable. The last one, a man with silver hair and a clipboard, begged. We've saved lives. You don't understand what we've done here. I do. You're a killer, that's all you are. No, I'm what remains when killers decide they're doctors. I shot him in the mouth. The room went silent. I searched all systems. Backed up nothing. Torched everything. Every record. Every file. Every specimen burned. But one thing remained. A wall of equipment, shielded by black plastic. Behind it, a server core wired to a high-band signal dish. Still active, still transmitting. I traced it to a tall steel mast on the surface, hidden in a false power grid casing. They weren't just studying the infected. They were communicating with them. I shut it down, pulled every cable, crushed the casing. Then I burned the uplink. No more signals from this place. Only mine. Day 273. I returned above ground. The sky was red, full humidity. One lone infected stood on the far side of the field. Still, watching. Its eyes reflected the burning antenna. Then it turned and walked away. It didn't run. It understood. That was enough. I planted Tower 3 at the highest ground. Used the base from the destroyed uplink. Mounted my transmitter. Checked the signal strength. 100% clarity. Then I triggered the broadcast. This is not your world. This is structure. This is the corridor. All signals flow from this point. Obey it or be removed. The voice you hear is not a request. Repeat every 20 seconds. No music. No coordinates. No hope. Just law. I renamed the zone. 0 South. Not a hold. A warning. Painted the mark on the concrete of the old helipad. Black circle, red line, no exits. Left 3 skulls around it, FEMA tags still attached. No one would rebuild here. That was correct. Day 274. The corridor was complete. 3 towers. North, central, south. All transmitting, all linked. No counter-broadcasts detected. No surviving resistance. No signals outside doctrine. Silence returned. But not peace. Peace is an illusion of ignorance. Silence is what you earn when no one dares to speak back. The infected will hear us now. So will the survivors. And the ones in between. They'll find no comfort. Only compliance. Chapter 19. The iron within the uniform. Day 275. All towers active. No opposition remained. No valid counter-transmissions. No confirmed survivor governance. No rogue enclaves operating above threshold density. Which meant doctrine had won. But it wasn't enough. Voice is not structure. Structure is not sound. Structure is a presence, a personnel chain, enforced, replicated, self-correcting. Doctrine must live through bodies, not just signal. I was never meant to be eternal. But the system could be. The corridor needed officers, not soldiers, not rebels, not thinkers, officers. Not named, not known, not moral. Only precise, only silent, only necessary. Glenville was ready. It had survived 275 days without collapse. It would become the cradle of permanent indoctrination. Objective: establish the first generational cadre of corridor officers. Codify their chain. Eliminate personality. Enforce absolute transmission of doctrine without deviation or interpretation. This would be the final layer. After it, nothing else would be required. No more corrections. Only replications. Day 276. Returned to Glenville, 3:30 hours. No patrol acknowledged me. Correct. Walked straight to the courthouse. 4th floor, cleared. Chalkboard still intact. Below it, the doctrine crate. I opened it, removed the original packet, first copy, first handwriting. Scanned every line, no edits. Still perfect. Began writing new page. Title, Officer, Initialization, Layer 1. It read, "You are not a person. You are a position. The corridor does not need your thoughts. It needs your movement." Pasted it to the wall. Marked it in red. Then I activated the flare canister beside it. Signal smoke drifted from the roof. Red to black. Every enforcer saw it. They came without being called. 16. 7 from Glenville. 2 from Harrisburg. 1 from Boston. 1 from Cincinnati. 5 from outer zones, still under review. Each stood in silence. I handed them knives. "Those who wish to begin," I said, "step forward and cut away your armband." 9 stepped forward. They obeyed. That was correct. Day 277. Phase 1, stripping. The 9 were removed from patrol. Stripped of names. Stripped of call signs. Given new identifiers. 01 through 09. Their armbands were burned. Uniforms replaced with identical, unmarked corridor grey. All slept in separate cells under the courthouse. No interaction. No contact. No speech. They were not isolated as punishment. They were being emptied. An officer of the corridor cannot have self. Only function. Day 278 to day 280. Phase 2, input saturation. For 72 hours straight, they were exposed to the broadcast loop. No light. No silence. Just the voice. Played at full volume. Every corridor phrase. Every operational doctrine. No escape. No variation. No pause. They were allowed food twice daily. Water was constant. No other contact. 2 broke on day 2. Attempted to speak. Were removed. Escorted back to scavenger tier. Memories intact. Watches removed. Hands branded. Was it worth it? One asked as I escorted him out. I looked at him. You failed the test of stillness. You'll fail everything else. He cried. I walked away. Day 281. Phase 3, command conditioning. 7 remained. We began control response testing. Each was placed into a command scenario. Simulated survivor violation. Protocol confusion. Signal failure. Infected breach. All were fake. But none of them knew that. I observed. Test 1, corridor law violation. A child entered a marked corridor zone carrying a red-marked bag. Violation, unscanned object. 04 hesitated. Looked to others. Asked, should I? He was removed. No warning. No one else looked at him again. Correct. Test 2, signal relay crash. Broadcast loop cut for 14 minutes. Zone entered full silence. 02 stood still. Did not panic. Did not speak. Took chalk, rewrote the phrase manually. You are being heard. Correct. Passed. Test 3. Survivor asks for food without request code. 06 shot him in the leg. Survivor screamed, tried to crawl away. 06 wrote on the wall in blood. Obedience is not hunger, it is nutrition. That phrase wasn't in the doctrine, but it was acceptable. Passed. Day 283. Phase 4, reintroduction. 5 remained. Zeros 1 through 5. They had not spoken to each other, had not requested anything, had not deviated. Now they would be returned to zones, but not as enforcers, as replicators, not to lead, not to command, to install. Each would return to a separate corridor. 01, Boston. 02, Glenville. 03, Harrisburg. 04, Cincinnati. 05, Florida Red Line Zone, Signal Tower 3. Each would receive jog, packet, field knife, no weapon, no food. One directive: install structure or remove it. They departed by dusk. Said nothing. Correct. Day 284. I remained in Glenville. Watched 02 walk to the eastern perimeter. He did not look back. One of the scavenger initiates asked me, "Are they going to lead now?" "No," I said. "They're officers, aren't they?" "No," I said again. "Then what are they?" I pointed to the tower. They are what keeps that voice true. That was enough. Officer Layer 1, complete. Codified, released, installed. From now forward, no zone will wait for my correction. The doctrine can walk without me. It has hands. It has movement. It has knives. It has men who no longer know their names. And it will never stop. Chapter 20. Doctrine draws them in. Day 285. Hive migration patterns were no longer random. The towers had changed the terrain. They responded to the voice, not the words, the rhythm. Tones, frequencies, pulse intervals. They didn't move like prey. They didn't stalk like hunters. They moved like algorithms. They followed, which meant doctrine was no longer noise. It was a lure. I had already seen it in Cinder Glen. Hivepool Delta dropped dead the moment the signal warped, not from weapons, from structure. I had watched an entire variant cluster collapse because it listened too well. That meant one thing. Doctrine wasn't just a law. It was now a weapon. But untested, incomplete, not yet scaled. It needed proof on mass targets, on migrating clusters, on apex hives. I would create a signal field. I would build a corridor trap. And I would erase the infected, not with fire. With obedience. Objective: construct the first doctrine-based extermination trap for hivepool infected clusters. Utilize signal saturation to disorient, paralyze, or eliminate large targets. Confirm doctrine lethality without direct combat. This would not be a war. It would be a demonstration. Day 286. Selected site: Redview Quarry, 10 kilometers east of the old Scranton perimeter. Natural bowl, steep walls, single access road, elevation gain on all sides. Previously marked as a red zone during the second month. No survivor settlements. No living memory of occupation. But the infected returned every month. Scout reports had logged 3 separate hive transits through the site over 60 days. The quarry would become the test chamber. Signal would become the knife. Day 287. Entered Redview, alone. Set initial field points, 5 in total. East Ridge, tower spike relay programmed with interval tone bursts. West Basin, synthetic loop with structured silence gaps. South Slope, portable flare speaker, distorted corridor phrasing. North Lip, repeater linked to Tower 1 in Glenville. Center relay K8, course signal pulse. Total power duration, 9 hours. If I failed to complete the test before the batteries collapsed, the system would fail. I began assembling the trap. Used fuel drums from an old construction depot to block exits. Hung stripped infected skulls from rebar to mark boundaries. Painted the quarry lip with corridor marks, red line through black square. Every step was a signal. The infected would understand. They had before. Now they would again. Day 288. Test initiated. 0100. Activated relay K8. Loop played. You are not free. This sound owns you. If you hear it, move. If you reach it, kneel. If you resist it, burn. 0223. First contact. 3 infected. Class, bipedal unmutated. Moved toward basin. No moaning, no feeding behavior. They walked until they reached the center relay. Then they sat. Cross-legged, limbs twitching. They made no sound. Did not move again. 0341. 5 more arrived. This time Hivepool Delta, confirmed by formation. 4 drones around a central subject with distended skull and exposed ribs. All 5 entered simultaneously. They stopped at the edge, turned to the core relay. Then the central drone opened its mouth. No sound, but the others collapsed. Limbs spasming, backs arching. Then still. The alpha drone did not fall. It stepped forward, pressed its hand to the speaker grill, and stood motionless. It began to sweat. Not normal. No infected sweats. Means it's listening. Means it's overloaded. At 0353, it dropped to its knees. Then it split open at the chest. Heart rupture, no weapon fired. Confirmed. High-value hive subject suffered fatal autonomic failure from exposure to relay signal. Day 289. 0415, cluster formation approaching from southwest. Estimated count, 30 plus. Too many for direct control. I adjusted the signal. Increased pulse rate, removed syntax, left only rhythmic intervals. Tone pause. Tone pause. 3 minutes later, the lead infected slowed. One screamed, then ran backward, tripped over its own feet. Others panicked, collided, shoved. Then they stopped together, like they heard a new command. 2 of them began convulsing. One's eyes ruptured. Another bit its own fingers until they shattered. Then the whole group dropped. Simultaneous, nervous collapse. 0 shots fired. 0 melee contact. 0 flamethrower, no napalm, no direct toxin. Just signal. They had listened. And listening killed them. Day 289 continued. 0645 final cluster. Large, 50 plus. Moving fast. Hivepool Delta confirmed by forward scouts. 3 alpha class variants leading. Each over 2 meters in height. Pale skin, rib spike armor, missing jaws. known as screamers. These are apex variants, organize others, can disrupt radio. I switched the loop. This is not salvation. This is disassembly. Hear this voice and break. Break for us, break in our name. The screamers paused. Their formation stuttered. All three looked up at once. Then one dropped. No sound, no hit. Dropped like a puppet cut from strings. Second collapsed 3 seconds later, froth at mouth, bleeding from ear canals. Third began walking in a circle, muttering low, vibrating sounds. It walked until its ankles split. Then it laid down, face up, and never moved again. I walked into the quarry, surveyed the bodies. None got up, none twitched, none turned. I stood above relay K8 and recorded the final field entry. Extermination complete. Doctrine confirmed as wide area termination tool. Hive-class targets now vulnerable to sound-based structure. Then I shut it off. The quarry was silent. Correct. Day 290. I returned to Glenville. Brought no bodies, only the relay. I entered the courthouse, unsealed the vault. Wrote the next page of doctrine. If they move toward it, you can erase them. If they resist it, you can control them. The signal is not law. The signal is the blade that speaks it. This page would be copied. Every tower would repeat it. The voice would no longer just guide. It would kill. Chapter 21, Quarry of the Obedient Dead. Day 291. Redview worked, that was proven. Hive-class infected didn't need bullets. They didn't need fire. They didn't even need steel. They needed instruction. And when the doctrine became their only language, they dropped. They seized. They ruptured. That changed the nature of extermination. Before burn zones, scorched forests, lure trap torch. Slow, loud, risk-heavy, always with losses, always dirty. Now structure did the work. Now they obeyed until they died. Now we didn't need to hunt. We needed only to speak. But temporary signal sites weren't enough. One relay could clear a basin, but hives always reformed, migrated, waited. We needed a permanent correction zone. A place where the doctrine didn't just echo. Where it pulled them in, broke their rhythms, and ended them. A sound line built into the landscape. A kill field without bullets. Redview Quarry would become that place. The first doctrine-based extermination site. The corridor's blade, always open, always waiting. Never sleeping. Objective: convert Redview Quarry into a permanent hive extermination zone. Install full-range, solar loop signal pylons. Embed death frequency arrays. Construct capture entry points. Program variant-specific tone clusters. No survivors allowed within perimeter. No signals allowed to override. No input allowed except correction updates. This would not be a place. It would be a function. Day 292. Return to Redview with 2 enforcers and a relay tech. Enforcers 04 and 07. Neither had spoken in days, neither needed to. They obeyed corridor steps without deviation. They carried tools. That was enough. Relay tech, civilian, not indoctrinated. He asked, "What are we building?" I replied, the answer to their hunger. He nodded, said nothing else. Correct. First phase, signal mounts. We constructed 5 steel pylons along the quarry rim. Height 4 meters each. Angle 15 degrees downward. Equipped with directional cone emitters. Each pylon embedded with 3 speaker cores and internal power matrix. All relays solar charged. No battery reliance. Loop programmed for infinite duration. Update only protocol active. No manual input possible. Each pylon emitted a slightly different rhythm. Pylon 1, triangle pattern. Pylon 2, cross-frequency pulse. Pylon 3, broken interval silence. Pylon 4, corridor voice 1. Pylon 5, corridor voice 1, inverted cadence. Together, they didn't just speak. They collided. Infected wouldn't hear just one loop. They'd hear conflict. They'd move to resolve it. Then rupture. Day 293. Second phase, containment traps. We embedded rebar frames into basin floor. Laid iron mesh grids over old gravel pits. 3 dozen in total. Each disguised under natural stone. Each trap wired with motion sensors. Any infected stepping across would trigger a tone surge, 20 decibels above baseline, for 0.8 seconds. Enough to induce neurological overload in any variant below Hive Delta. Repeated field testing confirmed effect. Bipedal drones seized on impact. Crawlers lost balance and suffocated. Roots convulsed until spinal fluid leaked. Perfect. We called it Pattern 9 collapse. Silent, no blood. Just obedience that kills. Civilian tech requested to leave. I've seen enough, he said. You haven't, I replied. He was offered a final task. Calibrate pylon sync through remote uplink. He complied. Then I handed him the doctrine packet. He asked, "What's this?" "Structure. Is there a page about me?" "No." That was the last thing he said. He walked into the East Trench. We left him there. The quarry didn't need engineers. It needed silence. Day 294. Third phase, perimeter sealing. We destroyed all road access. Used charge packs to bring down the eastern overpass. Caved in both maintenance tunnels. Redview now had one entry. A corridor path lined with tower speakers, each calibrated to the pull interval. Any infected walking down that corridor would hear nothing else. They wouldn't stop. They wouldn't think. They would walk until their systems collapsed. And the quarry would accept them. The pull corridor was named. Gate of no signals. No survivor would enter it. No infected would leave it. Correct. Day 295. Final phase, field activation. We initiated the full doctrine cascade. All 5 pylons live. All trap relays active. Voice transmission engaged. Total sound saturation time, 2 minutes, 14 seconds. Then silence. No birds, no wind. Then movement. At 03:14 first contact. 6 infected, direction northwest. Entry, quarry lip. They approached slowly, stopped. One turned to flee, the sound dragged it back. They convulsed before reaching the basin floor. All 6 dropped. Next wave, 16 infected. Mixed variants, 2 with partial armor growth, 1 known screamer. Same result. Ruptured on entry. 1 curled into fetal position. 1 simply collapsed, with no trauma visible. By dawn, we had logged 32 kills. No bullets fired. No injuries. No movement from us. Day 296. We remained to observe. 3 more hives passed the lip. None survived. 07 began carving tally marks into a stone slab. Didn't ask permission. He was correct. The marks were not for memory. They were for proof. By the end of day, 124 infected had entered. 0 left. I returned to the lip, stared down into the pit. The bodies didn't rot, they didn't move. They simply stopped, as if signal had stripped them of purpose. It had. The quarry wasn't a place anymore. It was a statement. The corridor had spoken, and the world had died listening. I opened the doctrine packet, wrote the next page. This is not a fortress. This is not a kill zone. This is the pit for the ones who listen too well. The signal is patient. The voice does not forgive. Walk in, and you walk out of existence. I burned the page into stone, buried it at the edge of the quarry. Future officers would find it, and they'd understand what was built here, what it meant. Redview Quarry, conversion complete. Status, active kill zone. Designation, extermination site Alpha 1. Corridor class, permanent directive weapon zone. Access, denied, to all unauthorized movement. It was done. We returned to Glenville. No announcement. No reward. Correct, Chapter 22, Salt in the Voice. Day 297. Redview worked. But Redview was a controlled basin, a quarry, landlocked, enclosed, sealed. The east coast was. No cliffs, no containment, just flat ruin and saltwater wind. The flooded cities didn't obey topography. Boston, Providence, New Haven, each half swallowed by rising tides and collapse, each pulsing with scattered hives, partial wreckage, and migration flow. They called it the drowned strip. Old maps didn't matter there. The shorelines had shifted, roads washed out, buildings cracked, boats and cars fused into rust lines on broken bridges. But the infected didn't leave. They nested in the salt. They adapted, drifted through the surf, built patterns into ship graveyards and drowned stadiums. The corridor had signal presence there. Tower 1 from Boston hit the upper coastal rim, but that wasn't enough. We needed to broadcast deeper, and we needed to kill more completely. Redview had become proof. Now I would build Alpha 2. This time in water. This time in full exposure. Wind, salt, and swarm. The infected would hear doctrine crash like waves, and they would die like tide foam. Objective: construct the second permanent extermination zone, Alpha 2, within the drowned strip, Providence ruins. Establish floating and sub-anchored signal pylons. Embed sound saturation relays into submerged terrain. Calibrate for coastal wind interference. Deploy lure signal to induce hive clustering. Goal: eliminate shore-class infected and create a permanent death signal perimeter between land and oceanic threat vectors. Day 298. Site selected, Providence Shipping Yard. Flooded to chest depth, covered in rusted cargo shells, sunken cranes, and broken sea walls. Signal line from Tower 1 barely reached the zone at 23% strength. Useless. No doctrine presence, no corridor marks, no warning signs. Just silence. Correct. That would change. Enforcers assigned, 01 and 05. 1 relay tech, selected from Glenville's compliance pool. No questions. If he asked anything, he'd be removed. He didn't. Correct. I marked the yard's eastern pier as the anchor point. We cleared the old rig crane with thermite. Used its steel spine to mount a vertical repeater. Dropped 4 floating buoys into the inlet, each fixed with speaker grills and sub-drives. Underwater relays submerged on metal rods, 12 feet deep. Coated in anti-rust mesh. Battery linked to solar disk embedded into a scrap raft. The tide would hide them, but they would speak. Sound doesn't stop in water. Neither does doctrine. Day 299. We activated test pulse 0200. Initial range 0.8 kilometers. Tide high, wind low. Loop. The land has spoken. This is the edge of structure. You are not in the ocean. You are in law. Collapse now. First contact 0243. 6 infected surfaced from the drowned courtyard of an old luxury condo. White skin, water bloated, eyes gone. Flesh peeled back across the skull in long wet strands. Class, aquatype hive drones. They didn't crawl. They didn't scream. They swam, quiet, synchronized, faces toward the buoy field. They formed a spiral. Not random, not collision. Patterned. They circled once. Then all 6 dove. Relays registered impact shock through underwater sensors. 3 did not surface. 4th rose, vomited black seawater. 5th surfaced and began rotating. Slowly. Then cracked open from the neck. Bone peeled back, brain cavity exposed. No wound, no bullet. Just the tone. Confirmed. Shore variant infected react to submerged doctrine tones. Second confirmed. Simultaneous exposure to above and below water frequencies causes cranial collapse. Test marked as success. Day 300. Full saturation loop activated. 6 buoys active. Crane pylon online. Underwater relays transmitting at 73% power. I adjusted the loop. You are adrift in the voice. The tide has judged you. Collapse as the shore demands. I didn't need survivors to hear it. Just the ones who'd forgotten how to breathe. Within the hour, the harbor floor moved. 18 infected surfaced from beneath the shipping crates. 2 shriekers, 1 brute. Others unknown class, webbed fingers, translucent skin, grown in tide. They surged toward the relay field. No hesitation. 01 raised his rifle. Do not fire, I said. He lowered it. Correct. They entered the field. The shriekers twitched mid-charge. 1 shriek became garbled static. It opened its mouth, but sound wouldn't leave. It listened too hard. Then its jaw tore itself apart. Then it fell. The brute stomped forward. Flesh hard, voice null, immune to above-ground tone. No. I triggered pattern 9, collapse on the submerged relays. 1 second later, its spine arched. Fluid burst from its ears. It fell sideways into the pier wall and cracked it. Then sank. No splashing. Just wait. Correct. Total kills by 500 hours, 45. 0 rounds fired. 0 losses. No contacts attempted to flee. All drawn, all dissolved. The doctrine had shaped their final direction. That was the test. Now it became installation. Day 301. We converted the harbor into a permanent site. 4 pillars welded into the seawall, each mounted with directional speakers and iron insulators. Shoreline cleared, dock sealed. Lure corridor built from rusted ship hulls. Spray-painted corridor arrows led from beach to waterline. Each